Hello and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Mordian Glory video, and before we get into today's video I would like to say a huge thank you to Jameson Van Etten for sending in some awesome pictures of his Imperial Guard army. This is heretical in the extreme. It's a Chaos Guard regiment, but I have to say it is very cool. Jameson's put some excellent effort into the fluff there. Lost colony of the Imperium that's rediscovered by the Iron Warriors, so they're heavily mechanized but also chaos as all hell. They've got loads of chimeras to represent sort of the industrialization that the Iron Warriors have put them through, and just loads of extra conversion details. So each character type is distinguished by their backpacks, so Nurgle, Slanesh are company commanders, Khorne are platoon commanders, so on and so forth. Loads of conversions, and what's really interesting is that the vast majority of the models are actually the snap-fit guardsmen. So it just goes to show that if you put a bit of time and effort and get some third-party bits, from Anvil Industries and or from other kits and whatnot, you can actually take those snap-fit guardsmen and make them look really unique. You just sprinkle in some of the more multi-part guys, and the army looks absolutely fantastic. So really good effort, James, and thank you for sending these pictures in. If anyone else has got any cool pictures they want me to use in my videos, please post them on my Facebook page. There will be a link down in the description below. So today, guys, I want to take a look at the article that was released by Games Workshop regarding command points and detachments. Now, as with any edition, things will change, and when I first saw this article I was a little bit unsure about it, but I've had time to sleep on it now. And I think that there's some really interesting changes in here, some for better and some for worse. And I think I'm trying to be quite even-handed about it. But yeah, let's just get into it first. So, long story short, guys, the way that they are making you run your command points and your detachments is essentially they've pulled the Uno reverse card and they've switched it around from 8th edition. So in 8th, it's take different detachments, and depending on which detachments you take, you will gain more or less command points. So take battalions, you have to take more troops than HQ, but guess what? You get access to more command points. Or if you want to take smaller, more elite forces, go and take like a Vanguard. You can get yourself 3 elite choices and you only have to take 1 HQ, but you only get 1 bonus command point for doing that. In 9th, the way they're doing it is everyone starts with the same amount of command points, and then you spend those command points pre-game to unlock additional detachments. So they've totally flipped on its head. An example they give, is you start, if you were playing a regular 2,000 point game, which they now call a strike force, you all start with 12 command points. Everyone starts with 12. And then you spend 3 command points to gain access to a battalion detachment. Now, if you're taking a core detachment, so they define a core detachment as a patrol, a battalion, or a brigade, and your warlord is in that detachment, then you don't have to spend the command points. So, for example, if you're playing a strike force game and you have 2,000 points and you are playing with 2 battalions, fairly standard 8th edition format, so we'll use that as a comparison, you would start with 12 command points, you would spend 3 on each battalion, so you'd go down to 6. But because your warlord is in one of those battalions, you get 3 command points refunded, so you back up to 9, so you've only spent 3. Now, for many armies, this is actually a good thing, because what many players were being forced to do was essentially take their normal-sized army and split it out across multiple detachments, just so that they could maximise their CP efficiency. So if you were already taking sort of 4 HQs and 6 troop choices, then you would be forced to sort of split those across 2 detachments just so that you could get more command points. So they've got rid of that element of doing it. Now you would just take everything in 1 detachment, you take it in a battalion. However, for other armies, this is a real problem, specifically for big horde armies. You see, now you will be punished for taking more than 1 detachment that lets you have access to troop choices. So, for example, if you want to take 2 battalions and you are, let's say, an orc player, you want to take that Green Tide, that's pretty much your most competitive build. There are some of the wackier builds out there, but you want that green tide. You know, you're going to want at least 5 or 6 mobs of 20 or 30 boys. Now, if you do that, yeah, you can fit that all in one battalion, but then you don't have enough troops left for your grot shield to help protect things like your looters. So if you want to then be able to take all the boys and all the grots that you need to take your competitive green tide list, you'll have to spend 3 command points to do that. Whereas if we look at Space Marines, for example, most Space Marine players were only taking the extra battalions and spending the points on things like scout squads because they wanted the extra CP to buff up their things like aggressors and centurions and thunderfire cannons. Those players don't need to worry about that now. They can just take 3 basic troop choices and they still have access to the 3 thunderfire cannons and the 3 squads of centurions and 3 squads of aggressors. No worries, and they actually don't pay as much tax to do that. They're just paying the tax for 3 troop choices rather than 6. Likewise, if you look at an army like the Imperial Guard, obviously it's the Imperial Guard channel, so we're going to focus on them for a little bit. We're actually in a really tricky situation now, because at the beginning of 8th edition, our platoon mechanic was taken away from us, which allowed us to take multiple troop choices under 1 troop entry. So you could take, you know, 5 troop choices in a platoon command squad and a platoon commander, and you know that would only count as 1 troop slot. Because of the way 8th edition worked and wanting to take multiple detachments to get more CP, Games Workshop got rid of the platoon mechanic, and so now 1 infantry squad equals 1 troop choice. So if you're playing Imperial Guard, and to play an effective Imperial Guard army, you need at least 90 to 100 infantry. I would recommend 120. To be competitive, that's you need your 90 infantry minimum. Now, to do that, you're going to either be forced to take 2 battalions, in which case you will be spending 3 command points, because you'll have to take an extra battalion, or you've got to upgrade to a brigade, in which case, yeah, you'll have access to your 12 troop choices there, but you're now having to spend tax on things like sentinels. So Games Workshop said all points are going up. Sentinels are sort of roughly 35 to 40 points now. So if we're conservative and say they go up to, say, 50 points a model, you're now going to be spending 150 points on tax units for your brigade. And that means just to get access to the bare number of infantry you need to be viable as a guard player. So you see how for some factions you look at, I'm going to look at Space Marines here. For some factions, this is a really big boost. And for other factions, you're taking less tax and getting more command points. And for other factions, specifically Horde factions, you're getting less command points and potentially at the same time you're spending tax. That's really, really, really tricky, and that's actually quite unfair. Now, the way 8th edition worked was if you want to take your elite army, you will have more firepower but less command points, so you won't be able to pull off as many wombo combos. But if you take less elite units and force yourself to take some troop tax and whatnot, you'll have access to more command points, so you can power up your elite units, but you'll have less points going into your elite army. They seem to have flipped that on its head. And this is just confirming the suspicions that I've had bit by bit through live streams and the other rule reveals we've seen. It really seems like Games Workshop is pushing us to taking less troops. They want less hordes. 8th edition started off as the sort of edition of hordes, and they're trying to make it where 9th edition is definitely not the edition of hordes. Now, so like I said, there are some big winners to this, and there are some big losers. And I think it will take us time to adapt our armies to the new format. Now, I'm trying to be really careful not to be salty about this edition, because at the end of the day, we're not playing 8th anymore. We're playing 9th, and I don't want to be like those players at the beginning of 8th edition, which bitched and moaned and whined. They BMW'd. And they complained and complained and complained, and Games Workshop eventually gave in and changed the game to how they suited it, rather than those players learning to change and adapt and overcome the new edition. So I think, whilst obviously I am very upset about how this affects my Mordian Iron Guard. You know, I've spent a year painting a pure infantry force for it effectively to be, you know, made much less efficient from what we can see. But on the other hand, I have to also take a step back and I have to practice what I preach. And I have to say, look, this is a new edition. We're not playing by the old rules anymore. Things have changed and we have to change, adapt and overcome. So from an Imperial Guard perspective, I really feel like what we're going to see now is a lot more hybrid lists, or really heavily mechanized and armoured lists, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I just think we're going to be seeing almost like, I don't want to say like a return to 5th edition where Metz was king. So if you're only able to take, you know, one battalion, if you want to take no tax and you only want to take that sort of one battalion with your warlord in it, then, you know, you're going to only have access to 6 troop choices, so 6 infantry squads. You're going to want to be able to protect those infantry squads, so chimeras are going to be really important. Likewise, if tanks are now less vulnerable to close combat, then we're going to be seeing a lot more Leman Russes on the battlefield. And so I think there are some positives. You know, there's a lot of treadhead commanders out there. A lot of guard commanders who love the Leman Russes, and they don't like the fact that they're sort of forced to take infantry to screen for their tanks. They want their tanks to grind the enemy beneath their iron treads. For you guys, I feel like 9th edition could be a really, really good one. Could be really positive. However, for the infantry commanders out there, I think we're going to have to learn some tough lessons. I don't think it's time to throw the toys out the pram just yet. We haven't seen the full edition yet, and there could be a lot of things that Games Workshop bring in which make infantry really powerful. I mean, new cover mechanics, new missions. They might be forcing infantry players to take less command points to help balance it out, because infantry could be super powerful when it comes to the new missions, which are very ITC based. So I was, you know, holding back on the salt mine for the moment. However, I also have a big concern. You know, if I've put out the balance for you there, I've kept it relatively positive. But if I allow myself just to speak plainly for a moment, I do have several concerns about 9th edition at this point. Firstly, I really feel like Marines, who are already very strong, are going to be the big winners in this edition. The fact that they will have even less tax and will start off with just as many command points as everyone else is really going to make them even more powerful. A lot of other factions out there, not just Imperial Guard, but you know, Dark Elder and Knights and Genestealer Cult, were relying on being able to essentially out-CP your opponents. Now, Dark Elder and Elder players are really going to be forced to go mono now, which will make those armies much weaker. And in a competitive setting, that's tough. Because in a narrative setting, when you're playing your pure Dark Elder army, your pure Elder army, you accept your bonuses and your weaknesses, and that's fine. But when you're playing competitive, if you're not able to get the most out of your army now, but another faction like Marines is totally unaffected by these changes, you've kept one army which was already very strong at the top, and you've taken options away from other armies to try and compete on the same playing field. Likewise with Guard. You know, we were really struggling in 8th edition towards the end of it. We've gone from at the beginning of 8th edition being top dog to now bottom, middle tier at the best. And the way we were sort of staying in the game was by taking triple battalion, getting, you know, and essentially out-CPing the Marines and just, you know, putting things into things like the Hammer of Sunderance and Basilisk that could double shoot. That's what we were doing to try and keep up. Those options have now been taken away from us. You know, you can't take you know, if you're going to have to spend a lot of CP to take multiple detachments and make one an Emperor's Fist tank and one an Emperor's artillery detachment. So other factions are now being forced to go mono, and it's making them weaker, which is fine, but the faction that was already loving it going pure and going as few detachments as possible and just taking extra for CP, they're even stronger. Space Marines are even stronger. Chaos armies are now in a really tricky place because they've been told for the last year or so by Games Workshop, yeah, you're not getting all the special rules that Marines are getting, but you've got all these codexes to pick from. You know, by not getting bonuses for being pure and encouraging you to soup, you know, we're making chaos. You know, we want chaos to be a smorgasbord, and alliance, a hodgepodge of demons and marines and renegades and knights. We want that just chaos army to be an eclectic mix and, you know, and have that juxtapose the neat ranks of the Imperium. Well, now chaos players are going to be really punished for doing that. More so than almost anyone, chaos players are going to struggle. Another example is Genestealer Cult. Genestealer Cult are an incredibly CP heavy faction. In fact, without their stratagems, they're actually very weak. And we've seen Genestealer Cult when they made a really big splash initially and were really competitive, and then everyone just got used to the gimmicks, and then they're getting beaten now. So Genestealer Cult are actually really low down. They're probably one of the bottom tier armies because everyone learned how to adapt to them and got around their CP gimmicks. Well, now they don't even have their CP gimmicks, Genestealer Cult are going to be literally bottom tier. They're going to be awful. You know, they can't out CP anyone. And if they want to try and get more CP, they can't. They can't do it. So that's a really tricky position to be in if you're a Genestealer Cult player. Don't forget, a lot of restrictions that have been put in place over 8 to try and balance out spam are also not going to make sense anymore. So, for example, Genestealer Cult, again, can only take one of each character per detachment. And the point was that you can only take one of each character, so take more detachments. Now you can't do that. Now if you want to take more than one of each character, you've got to spend CP to unlock extra detachments to do that. That's really punishing. For an army that needs its CP, and Games Workshop built up around CP, you're really making them you're just chopping their legs out from them. You're not even chopping their legs out. You're hacking their legs off and just hacking into that corpse. Like, they are so... I don't know how Genestealer Cult are going to manage. Honestly, it'll be interesting to see how they adapt. I'm not sure what they're going to do, though. Tau. Now, you all know that I hate Tau. Like, so if I'm putting them up as an example of people that are getting fucked and saying it's a bad thing, you know that I feel a bit funny about it. So Tau players have been restricted to one commander per detachment, and that was done so that they couldn't just spam out like 6 of the things. Well, now if Tau want to get more than one commander, they're going to have to spend a lot of CP to unlock those extra detachments to get those extra commanders, and all you're going to see is everyone switch over to Farsight Enclave because they can take 2 commanders. So suddenly every Tau player is going to be Farsight again. And what you're going to see is a lot of Tau lists are just going to be, you know, triple Riptide and 2 Tau commanders. That's what you're going to see. So it's going to, you know, Tau's taking a big hit from this. So in some ways, you're really, you know, so you're making troops harder to take. You're taking for several factions HQs harder to take. But then again, there's Marines which just don't suffer from this. Marine players are loving it. And when you go on the forums, you can see a lot of Marine players saying, "This is great. I'm getting more CP, taking less tax. You know, it's great." And I really think that that 9th edition is shaping up to be the addition of the Adeptus Astartes. It's going to be tough. Because they were already really, really good. And again, people have pointed out the way they're doing the points increases. You know, cultists are going up by 50%. Intercessors are going up by 16%, I believe it is. So again, Marines are being made better. Elite infantry is being pushed. So my big concern from all the reveals that I've seen from 9th is that they're saying troops aren't as important, and you can take whatever you want. You know, take the elite units, take the minimum tax as possible, put it all in one detachment. You don't get advantages for taking a varied army. Put it all in one detachment and just spam your elite stuff as much as you want. And so I have two concerns. I have two concerns and one complaint. First concern, armies are going to stop looking like armies. People are going to be taking even less troops and just taking as much elite stuff as they possibly can. An example is that if you are a Marine player now, you take your single detachment, you could unlock another detachment for 3 CP, put Gilliman in that detachment, who gives you a bonus 3 CP, and so actually you've got 2 battalions for no CP cost whatsoever, and so you're already at an advantage over other people. You know, it's before it's even released, it's not working. You know, it's favouring one faction really, really heavily. So that's my first complaint. My second complaint is we've been here before in 7th edition. In 7th edition, Games Workshop really dumbed down the importance of troops. And if you took troops, you were kind of an idiot. And so what happened in those armies, in that edition, was those armies which relied on taking troops to be powerful were bottom tier. For example, Orcs were bottom tier, Guard were bottom tier, Tyranids were not great outside of Flyer and Spam. Genestealer Cult were just a nothing faction. You know, so that's my big concern. So you've got people that are reliant on troops are getting, and then people just took. So in 7th, people just took the most killy stuff, and it just meant that everyone whoever got first turn just got brutalized. So I feel like Games Workshop has tried to go, we're trying to stop the wombo combos and people getting blasted off, and they've even said they want to stop alpha strikes, but they've given people the tools to do alpha strikes even harder. So I feel like they're double speaking. I feel like they're saying, it's almost like Ingsoc, it's almost like 1984. They say, we want you to not be alpha strike to death, but then they're making troops which arguably have, you know, not great firepower output in comparison to elite units. They're making troops less important and making people just able to take the elite stuff. So that's counterproductive, isn't it? And my complaint. So they're my two main concerns. And my complaint is, you're saying to me, you know, you're putting in your article, oh, guess what? It's great. You don't have to take troops anymore. You can just take your fun stuff. Well, I like taking troops. Loads of people like taking troops. I mean, you have a type of army in your game called a Horde army. There's multiple factions which build Horde armies. Tyranids, Genestealer Cult, Orcs, Imperial Guard. You know, just to name the ones off the top of my head. There's probably several others I've missed. I like taking hordes. I like taking troops. And now you'll be like, great, guess what? You don't have to take those troops anymore. Isn't that great? And I'm sat here thinking, but I like troops. You're making this edition less fun for me. I can adapt. I can take tanks. I can take my Steel Legion are probably loving this edition. They were built around a single brigade. But what if I like troops, Games Workshop? What are you doing? You know, you're turning me off. You're turning me off 9th. And every release, when 9th edition was announced, I tried to get happy about it. And every reveal they've done has made me feel less and less certain about the edition. And I've just thought of one other concern that I have. What about Militarum Tempestus? They don't have a heavy support choice. They don't have a fast attack choice. They only have one. They only really have troops, and they can only take 3 of their elite choices, which is command squads. What are they meant to do? You know, Militarum Tempestus players are either forced to spend command points so they can take multiple small units of troops. You know, if they want to take more than 30 scions in 6 5-man squads, they're going to have to take another battalion. Or they're going to have to take big 10-man squads, but scions don't work great in big 10-man squads. You want 1 or 2 of them in your army, so you can take advantage of some of the new stratagems. But you want the majority of your troops to be 5-man squads. Now that's punished. It's like MSU's been punished. It's really, really tricky. And again, I really feel like this change is change for the sake of change. And the last thing I want to say on it is, if there's any more evidence you want to prove that this edition is to favour Space Marines, just look at, they've gone, well, we don't want people to take as many troops, so we're going to restrict it. So you can only really take 6 unless you want to spend loads of command points or tax on brigades or extra battalions. But then they've gone, oh, by the way, yeah, Marine players, you've got that combat squad rule, don't you? So if Marine players want to still go multiple small units, and if Marine players want to take a bit of an infantry horde and stay MSU, they just take 10-man squads and then combat squad them. And so actually, if Marines can get around the rule of, you know, it's either MSU and few or big squads. So this edition hasn't even come out yet, and people are breaking it already. I really am not sure how I feel about it. So that's me being honest. That's me, you know, I'm just feeling uncertain about the whole thing from my infantry perspective, but trying to end the video on a positive note. So we've got all the salt. That's my bitching, my moaning, and my whining out. That's my concerns. On a positive note, I really feel like my Steel Legion are going to love this edition. You know, I've got, you know, they all fit in one brigade. I've got plenty of Lehman Russes and Chimeras and Sentinels. My Steel Legion are probably going to be absolutely loving it. And so we might see a bit of a return to, you know, Imperial Guard mechanized lists, which is very good because mechanized lists overall are cheaper to collect than infantry lists. So you might see that we'll get, you know, rather than Guard players to remain competitive, they have to spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds on infantry squads. Now, if Guard players can build a competitive list and it's all mechanized, that would be really cheap. You know, you can always get plenty of Lehman Russes off eBay for dirt cheap. Same for Chimeras. Yeah, so I think whilst 9th edition is going to not be the age of the infantry horde, I think it could be really, really positive for mechanized and treadhead armies, and for us to be able to just take single brigade. So there we go, guys. I'm going to end it there. I hope I've been able to keep a fairly balanced view. I've tried to keep it positive at the beginning, and then in the middle I've voiced my concerns and my complaints, but not gone fucking angry over it. I've just been frank about it. And then I've tried to end it on sort of a positive, saying, you know, at the end of the day, I will reiterate what I said at the beginning of the video. Yes, we're going to have complaints because it's not going to be 8th anymore. It's going to be 9th. And so we will have to learn to change, adapt, and overcome. But that's fine. That's the same with any edition of 40k. Things are different, and it's going to be up to us to learn how to play the current edition to its best. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Put your thoughts down in the comment section below. Do you have the same complaints and concerns as me? Or do you think 9th edition is great? I love it. I just love the fact that they're simplifying it. Do you think that maybe Marines are going to be more powerful? Or have you seen something I've missed which shows that actually everyone's going to be on this level playing field? Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Personally, I'm feeling very 50-50. I think there will be some positives, but I also think that there's going to be some big shakeups which are going to cause some problems for a lot of armies. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.